Hi, good afternoon, Proclaim community. I'm here with a really good friend for our Facebook Live conversation, Michael Hall. Michael, how are you doing today?
Doing all right. Although sitting in the massive amounts of snow here in Ottawa, I'm kind of missing Vancouver right now. But
Yes, yeah. So, to our Proclaim community, as you're coming online, I just want to give a quick introduction to Michael and to our friendship. Michael and I went to high school together here in Vancouver at St. Thomas More Collegiate. We also graduated with another good friend of ours, Fr Nick Meisl. Many of you would know from the variety of lectures, retreats, different things that he offers here in our archdiocese. So, as you're coming online, just know that we have some local conversation with Michael. I'm sure you'd love to be here in Vancouver, but you're also raising your family and leading a lot of, I guess, learning around accompaniment in CCO, which is where you work right now.
yeah.
So we're going to have a conversation around accompaniment, but before we jump into that, Michael, I'm wondering if you could share with us briefly a little bit about your story, like where you grew up here in Vancouver, parish you attended, and how you really came to an adult decision to come to know Jesus, and then we'll get into accompaniment.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, home for me is North Delta, Immaculate Conception in Delta. That's the parish where I did most of my sacraments. I was actually baptized at St. Michael's in Burnaby, I think, but most of
Okay.
my life grew up in IC Delta there. Father Luder or Monsignor Luderback and Father Gary Franken, among others. A very young Father James as well, in James, in James Hughes. So yeah, but and then as you said, Eric, we went to school together at STM, and for me, faith was always something that was important to me, but I would not say I had a personal relationship with Jesus or anything like that. But it's just something that was kind of on my radar. It guided some of my decisions. Would have been nice to have guided some other ones as well. But it was at SFU. So after I finished up at high school, we went up to SFU to study history, and it was there that I encountered CCO, and Eric and I were both involved together. And Brett Powell was the leader of everything back then, and yeah, that it started bringing a new perspective for me in faith. But it was in particular a fall retreat that I went on that we hosted up in Squamish, and I didn't want to go, but Brett kind of convinced me to go, and it was there. I'd never seen Eucharistic adoration before, just never something I'd encountered in my own upbringing and experience in the parish and family life and that, and so I was uncertain what to do with this experience. It seemed very foreign, but at the same time, I had an understanding of what I was supposed to believe as a Catholic about the Eucharist. And I wasn't too sure about it personally, but then just sitting there, I just had an encounter with him. And to me, and reflecting back, it always makes sense because there I was actually face to face with Jesus. And that's when he really broke through. And so what I believed in my mind, I believed that God loved me. I believed that God loved other people and that, but now I was experiencing his love for the first time. And that experience was so profound, and it just changed my outlook on everything. I really experienced conversion that day in my heart, and yeah, that changed my trajectory. My intention was to become a teacher. My dad's been a teacher at STM since 1979. And so that was my plan. I was going to go into our Catholic schools in the diocese, and probably my hope was to go to STM and teach in history and religion and all those things. But then I felt the Lord placed a deep call in my life that I wanted to continue what people had offered me in CCO, that opportunity continued for others. And I really felt that the Lord was telling me to go and teach the future teachers, was kind of the motto for me at that time. That I can go and I can be a teacher, which is really important. And then we need great teachers, but we also need people who can help reach the future teachers. And then the whole idea of spiritual multiplication and that kind of played into it. So yeah, and that was 2003 that I joined staff with CCO and moved out here to Ottawa after my first year on staff. And Of course, that was in part because my wife's family is here, and so we had both started working for CCO and said to CCO, "Hey, we weren't married yet, but said we got to move one of us so that we can be together." And I got the move out here, and so we live out in the suburbs of Ottawa, and my wife's family lives 5 minutes down the road from us, and we've got 4 kids here, and yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story of encounter, but I know that over the course of that time, you were accompanied by a number of different people that were mentors to you, friends. I consider you a good friend and even a mentor to me in learning about being a missionary disciple. So we're going to get into accompaniment. And actually, right before we get into accompaniment, I just want to say that because you live in Ottawa, that and I know Clay would really love to hear this, that our Canucks just took your Senators to town the last number of
not
games.
My Senators. So. Not my Senators.
Yes, the hometown that you live in. You're a Canucks fan through and through. That's right. Yeah,
it's right here.
There you go.
There you go. It was right out here. This is what I wear every time I go skating out on the ponds here, just to make sure everybody knows where my allegiances lie.
Yes, there you go.
I very much enjoyed watching the Canucks wipe out the Senators last week. It was fantastic. Yeah, my only regret is that because we're in lockdown, I couldn't go and talk to anybody about it.
Right. Yeah, you just have to text and share online. That's right. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get to something really important, and it's on the theme of intentional accompaniment. And before we get into intentional accompaniment, let's look at that word accompaniment. And Pope Francis has kind of popularized that word through some of his preaching, and in particular, Evangelii Gaudium. He brings that forward. And I'm going to just pull up a quote from Evangelii Gaudium, paragraph 169. I'm going to read it, and then I'd love for you to kind of help us see what it means to step into this idea of accompaniment. So it says in 169, the church will have to initiate everyone, priests, religious, and laity, into this art of accompaniment, which teaches us to remove our sandals before the sacred ground of the other. The pace of this accompaniment must be steady and reassuring, reflecting our closeness and our compassionate gaze, which also heals, liberates, and encourages growth in the Christian life. So, Michael, I'm wondering if you could give us insight into the art of accompaniment.
I think this is such a beautiful imagery that Pope Francis gives us here. And I think if you look at the lives of many saints, that they've lived this in the way that they minister to other people and they spend time together. To me, it's such it really just speaks to the idea that everybody's on a journey. You know, we use that idea of the spiritual journey. Lots of people talk about that, but it's so important to have somebody who goes with you on the journey, who can help you avoid the pitfalls as you kind of make your way through your life. And to me, that accompaniment is that really you pull alongside someone and you walk with them. You know, you can picture, if you want to use biblical images, you can picture Jesus on the road to Emmaus, the way he comes alongside these two men, or these two people that are on the road away from Jerusalem, and breaks open their hearts through this conversation. Or the way Philip he's brought alongside the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts of the Apostles, and he speaks to this man and goes with him, even though it's just a short part of this man's journey, but he comes alongside him and walks with him. And I think for us, that's the call, is so much of ministry and evangelization ultimately boils down to not just communicating information and teaching great content, but walking with people through the content, so that whatever it is that you are sharing with them is in the context of a relationship, and that they feel that closeness, you know, as Pope Francis wrote, that closeness, that care, that people don't feel that we're just kind of dumping information on them, or dumping an idea or a worldview, but we're actually we're somebody who cares enough to be able to walk with them on their journey. And I think that as our starting place is a huge part of what makes ministry really effective. You know, that's, you know, I think both of us can speak to that in our own experiences of the importance of people coming alongside us and helping us, so that we're not living faith on our own, but realizing that actually there's other people that want to go on the journey with us.
Mm-hmm. Many of our members in Proclaim and those who will watch this live with us now and in the future will be involved in a variety of different ministries and have led different programs, whether it's through RCIA, the CCO Faith Studies, Alpha. And what I'm hearing you saying is that accompaniment really allows for each of those ministries, programs, and tasks within the context of the church. It allows for I guess the meaningful substance of helping a relationship develop, not only with others in our community, but with a relationship with God.
Absolutely. I mean, you can take people through the greatest content possible, but if there's not relationship, it's going to be far less likely to land with people and really affect their lives, because there wasn't somebody to help them see how it affected them personally, and for someone to be able to hear them out as they talk their way through things, as opposed to just receiving information and content.
I think this is good news for all of us because we know how to form relationships, or at least we've got a basic understanding of relationships because we live with family members, colleagues. We're constantly connecting with people. And so Pope Francis here in inviting us to the Art of Accompaniment is just saying relationships matter, and they matter to you, they matter to God, and whatever program or context that you find yourself in when it comes to ministry, you have to make sure that relationships are at the forefront.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I'd love to get into intentional accompaniment, which is the title of our conversation for today. And intentional accompaniment is a model or a framework that CCO has developed, and it's relatively new in its development, but the lived out reality of intentional accompaniment has been something that has been at the root and at the heart of CCO's ministry for the last 30 years. So could you share with us a little bit about intentional accompaniment, what that means for CCO and what it could mean for us in Proclaim?
So I think the term accompaniment, part of I'll say the problem with it is that it could be interpreted very, very broadly. And sometimes it could be that you might feel like, well, I'm just going to go on a walk with this person wherever they're going. And I'll be there with them. And there's value in that for sure. But if we want to see, in a way, results in ministry, and I don't want it to turn into a conversation about numbers and results and that, but at the same time, we want to be effective in our evangelization, or we have a direction we want to see people go. We want to see them move towards conversion. We want to see them move towards the fullness of missionary discipleship. Well, if we want to see those things happen, we have to have a plan. We don't want to just kind of leave that to chance, leave that to hoping that their journey will take them there and we can just go with them. And so that's where we added the term intentional to go with accompaniment, to describe the way that we really want to see our missionaries and anybody who's kind of looking at this model to step in and say, actually, I know the way you should go. I don't know every step of your journey. The point isn't to say, tell people what to do, but the point is to say, I can help you get to the goal of your life, which is to be in relationship with Jesus and to grow in discipleship. And so I know the general way, and I can help point you in the right direction and be there as you go along your journey, to help you avoid the pitfalls, avoid the cliff on this side and the hard parts, and just be able to keep people moving in the right direction. So we relate that back as well to Jesus and what he did. That when he calls, for instance, Andrew and Peter, he says, "Come after me, and I will make you fishers of men." And that word "make" is really clear. You don't make something without a purpose in mind and a plan to get there. And so Jesus clearly knew. He said, "I'm going to make you into fishers of men." And we have to imagine that he had a plan, and that if you read through the Gospels, you see that there's a plan, that he grows these men to the point where they can become the apostles that will change the world. And then he says, at the Great Commission, to go and make disciples of all nations. So he gives them that same word, I would say that same intentionality is being given to them. He's not saying go and find disciples, go and hope there are some. He's saying go and make them. And so again, it's that speaking to that intentionality. So we feel like what we were developing in intentional accompaniment is really just an outflow from those points that the Lord himself is making, that, well, if we want people to grow into the disciples that they're called to be, there's got to be a plan and intentional action to help people grow there.
Mm-hmm. For all of our West Coasters, we're always outside and we're hiking, and we're familiar with the idea of having a trail map, having something that guides us to a destination. So I think what you're sharing resonates with that at that level. But I guess, like, when I think of intentional accompaniment, and I'm wondering if maybe our listeners might be kind of thinking of it in this way as well, like, go and make disciples, come after me, I'll make you fishers of men. Those sound great, but are there like some key like markers or kind of steps that we want to take, not only in our own lives, but with those that we get to journey with, to give us a little bit of like more tangible things that we want to move people through?
Mm-hmm. Well, and you mentioned that you're going to be doing the master class that we have on intentional accompaniment, and that's part of what that master class walks through is some of the different stages that we see that people generally go on this journey. And every journey is unique, in the way that somebody experiences it. Some are slow, some are fast, some are kind of a very winding route, some are very direct. But in the end, there's a general trajectory that people tend to go, and so we've identified some of those stages. Part of that comes from reading Sherry Waddell's work in Forming Mental Disciples. She has her 5 thresholds of conversion, and you'll see that those are referenced in our materials as well. And a lot of the 4 of her 5 thresholds are part of our model. So it starts with trust. That every relationship has to start with a relationship of trust. If there's no trust, then there's no possibility to evangelize. There's no possibility for any relationship, let alone just in the evangelistic relationship. And then it moves through, curiosity, where somebody's a little bit interested, they kind of have one-off questions or casual questions about faith, but they aren't yet on a sustained search. And then that moves to an openness where they're into a more sustained, asking a question of like, could this be true? This idea of faith, Jesus, the teachings about this, also, could it be true? And then finally, in the final stage of seeking, that they're actually saying, actually, I have to ask the question. I've come to see this is likely true. Is it for me? Which is those are 2 different questions of like, is this true, and am I going to live by that? Are 2 different things. So that final stage really is saying, is this for me? Which then leads to conversion. Conversion is really, for us, that's the first direction you're pointing people in, is that point of initial conversion where we experience the conversion of the heart, of the mind, of the will, that we turn our whole lives toward Jesus. We say yes to becoming his disciple. But now the journey's just started from there, right? Now you've got the rest of your life where you're trying to grow into a missionary disciple. And so we identify holiness and mission as the 2 areas where people are going to grow. Excuse me. They're going to grow in maturity in those 2 areas as they grow in their prayer life, in the sacramental life, in their life of virtue, but also in engaging in the mission of the church, because that is a crucial part of Pope Francis' call for missionary disciples, is that we have to be engaged in the mission, in evangelization.
Missionary discipleship sounds like a daunting task, not only for ourselves, but also for those we're wanting to accompany and reach. What you're sharing by way of steps are, I guess, tangible steps that we can begin to start with. Like it's something that I can kind of work with, and knowing that each of these steps can progressively move towards the daunting task of forming missionary disciples. The other thing that you mentioned is, oh, go ahead, Michael. You got.
I was just gonna say, yeah, it looks like such a, if you just say like, go and make disciples, you go, what? How am I supposed to do that? But these steps identify so many different little, I can't think of the right word here, but like just steps on the way. That it's incremental. That was the word I was trying to think of. That they're incremental, and so you can say, well, I can just help this person move from not trusting anything about the church to being able to trust someone in the church. That's the first step. It's not the end journey, but and so seeing the whole process that way of these kind of incremental steps, I think, can help make it a little more tangible, a little more doable.
Yeah. intentional accompaniment is very much other focused. It's kind of taking our time to think about where the people that we're accompanying are at before considering what program we were going to start running or what teaching that we feel like is necessary. It starts first with where are they at, what's going on in their lives, what are the questions that they're asking, and based on that, where can we help them, I guess, understand and be aware of God's great plan in their life. And I shared with you this scripture earlier that just came to mind. It's 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8, and it says, "So deeply do we care for you that we are determined to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves, because you become so very dear to us." So intentional accompaniment first is caring for the other, and not just thinking about the teaching that we want to offer, but to allow for our very lives to be shared with another.
And we'll use the phrase, sometimes people will say people over programs, which I think is good, but even better is people through programs. That we can merge the two together. That as we do want to bring people to great content, and there's lots of content out there, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's wonderful, and it's going to really help your relationship with them in terms of being able to teach them. But we have to do that with the mindset of what I'm doing is I'm reaching people through this material rather than these people are the ones I will give this material to, and the material is the primary, but the primary is always the person. And the scripture verse is so perfect.
Yeah,
that's where you want to get to. That people would feel that from you. That so deeply do you care for them. They feel that care, and that makes all the difference in your mission effort, because they know then that it isn't about you pushing away you think. It's that you care for them so deeply, and you're sharing something that's so deeply impacted you that that just opens the doors in new ways.
We've taken a helicopter view of intentional accompaniment, and I know that there's so much more to learn and understand around this. Even though it is a simple concept, it can be challenging to live out, and there's a lot of wisdom that has been developed over the years within ministry with CCO and in others. Last summer, you offered, or CCO offered, an intentional accompaniment masterclass, and a number of our Proclaim members were able to join that masterclass and join alongside other students and parish leaders from across Canada and the United States. And the good news for us is that some of these Proclaim members have taken on the privilege to offer this accompaniment masterclass for our Proclaim community. So it starts next week. And for those that are listening, and for those that will listen to this later and are kind of sitting on the fence around the masterclass, tell us a little bit about what the masterclass will uncover, maybe some of the fruits that you saw around it, just to give a little bit of a taste for those that are interested in the masterclass.
So I think one of the things we did is, so Andre Renier and myself sat down and worked our way through, and then Amber used it now, her name, but now that she got married over the summer. But she, so the three of us really kind of will guide you through this experience. And when you're sitting down to talk with, especially with Amber and Andre, you're talking to two people who are doing this all the time. So you were hearing from people who are on the ground. Amber's work in CCO, I mean, not only was she a campus missionary for a number of years, but now she does a lot of work coaching in parishes and dioceses all across Canada and the United States. And she's coaching people how to implement intentional accompaniment in their parish setting, and to be able to, in a way, like create a bit of a movement within their parish of missionary disciples who are reaching out to build a new generation of missionary disciples. And Andre is doing the same throughout the world, in England and other areas of the United States and Canada. So you're talking to people who are doing this on the ground. So we have a lot of practical tips as we go through this. And so we're going to look at some different angles. We kind of, we don't start from the perspective of trying to take you through the basics of intentional accompaniment. There's actually we recommend we have a short booklet that you can read that they can help kind of give you that basic foundation of the model. And the idea is to take you to the next step after that, and to kind of go a little bit deeper into that And our hope as well is to encourage discussion through the masterclass. That was the way it was designed, to help encourage you to get into a conversation with other people, so that you can not only have learned from some people who are doing it, day in and day out, but also you learning from each other, and growing in that way from your experiences right there on the ground in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm. With the pandemic, we've all turned ourselves online and into Zoom calls and webinars and all of that. And I've been on a variety of different Zoom calls over the past year. I know you have as well. And the masterclass, I guess what I appreciated about it, because I was able to be part of it, was that it had a variety of different interactions. And so it wasn't just about sitting and watching something or listening to someone. We listened to your conversation with Amber and with Andre. It prompted conversation with others. So we got to learn with others that are in ministry and are desiring to journey through intentional accompaniment. And then we got to ask some questions. And so that format, I think, will be of a great benefit for learning and for our participants that are considering joining our Intentional Accompaniment Masterclass. Now, how many sessions did it go through? And again, what were some of the fruitfulness that you heard or knew about from some of the participants that went through it?
So we had 6 sessions.
Yep.
I'm actually, questioning myself, did we have more? But I think it was, the 6 sessions that we did. And so each session is a video that wasn't, we tried to keep them relatively contained. We didn't want them to go on and on. And as you said, the design is to be able to engage with others. And I think that was a lot of the fruit that a lot of people saw in the summer. It was a neat experience. As you mentioned, we actually had people from 6 different countries involved. We had about just over 80 leaders with 6 different countries involved, including all across Canada, all across the United States, and other places as well. And I think that was one of the neat experiences, was to get to talk with other people who were trying to live out the same things and maybe struggling with the same things in ministry, and hearing different perspectives, hearing different experiences, and then engaging with the content in that way. That now you're hearing a common message, and you're trying to live it out in a somewhat common way, but yet in all these different experiences. And I think that brought a lot of light to people. And I think as well, we were doing it in the midst of this summer, and so we were, right in the thick of the pandemic, and it was, everybody was struggling with the same thing around the world, that they couldn't meet with their people in person the way they wanted to, and they're doing a small group Bible study on a Zoom call, and how do we engage as a parish, and with people that we can never see, and all these things. So it was also a bit of a help in that perspective. Even just, again, you can't meet with the people you would normally meet with just to bond together, to have fellowship, as leaders. And so I think that's another way that this masterclass can be a help for you. I mean, of course, the content is good, but the interaction between each other is, I think, almost as important as what you'll learn from the videos.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, we were able to do a very brief helicopter view of intentional accompaniment. If you want to join our masterclass, you can go to weareproclaim.com/training, and we're going to have 2 offerings for now. We were overwhelmed by the response of that, so if we can, we will try to add a couple of additional offerings, so that everyone who's interested and would like to grow in this art of accompaniment, and in particular using the model of intentional accompaniment that CCO has developed, everyone who's interested and wanting to will be able to go through this. And regardless of what ministry and what kind of program or involvement you're in, this is a wonderful tool to help us in Proclaim become missionary disciples. Whether you have people in your life that are not disciples and that you're wanting to reach out to them, we call it our proximate periphery, those are close to us but far from Jesus, or you're in ministry and are forming disciples, this model can be an effective model for you. And Michael, I think you said it, we are privileged to be disciples, and that this model can help us not only form other disciples, but other missionary disciples. And in the intentional accompaniment model, you use the term multiplying missionary disciples. And I think that's a model that we need to learn how to take on in all of our ministries, so that we don't find ourselves burnt out. and being called upon all the time, because that never really happens in our church, right?
No, of course not.
Well, at least not in Ottawa. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michael, I'm so appreciative of you taking the time to have a quick conversation with me around intentional accompaniment. And for those that are interested, please consider signing up with us, joining our masterclass. I'm going to point you to one more resource, and that is to the Proclaim podcast. If you haven't subscribed, feel free to subscribe to our podcast. There's an episode there where I have a conversation with Deacon Raphael Salvino from St. Matthew's and Father Richard Conlin from Corpus Christi. And they went through the masterclass with CCO over the summertime, and they had some really neat insights that have helped them in their ministry and in their vocation. So feel free to subscribe to our podcast. Michael, thanks so much for joining us and for having this quick conversation. For those that were able to join us live, thanks for taking the time to have this lunchtime chat. And we hope that we can help continue to encourage you, to inspire you to proclaim Jesus in your homes and in your communities. So have a good afternoon. Thanks very much, everyone.